بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. First, I would like to thank Brother Junaid for putting together this great workshop as well as ICLI. I definitely think it's a crucial and important topic. We should definitely have a lot more sessions like these. As the brother said, the topic is prophetic parenting. And yes, we're going to learn about how the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was a parent. So the goal for today is to leave you with some principles, some practical principles you can use in your life. And we're beginning with the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ لِمَنْ كَانَ يَرْجُو اللَّهَ وَالْيَوْمَ الْآخِرَ وَذَكَرَ اللَّهَ كَثِيرًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that surely you have in the example of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam a beautiful example. But for who? Who's going to seek out this example of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Allah Azza wa Jalla said, for the one who hopes in Allah and the last day, and وَذَكَرَ اللَّهَ كَثِيرًا, and the one who remembers much. This is the person that you're dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're hoping to meet Allah Azza wa Jalla, and you're hoping the akhirah and the rewards in the akhirah will push you to follow Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And why not? As the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was the greatest father that ever walked on the face of this earth. He was not just a messenger and a prophet of Allah. He was not just a leader, he was not just a businessman, but also he was a parent, and a great parent at that. After the death of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Abu Dhar, a Sahabi, a companion, proclaimed and said, لَقَدْ تُوَفِّيَ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ وَمَا طَائِرٌ يُقَلِّبُ جَنَاحَيْهِ فِي السَّمَاءِ إِلَّا ذَكَرَ لَنَا مِنْهُ عِلْمًا. Abu Dhar, this Sahabi, this companion said, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam has died. And there isn't a single bird that is flapping its wings in the sky, except that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave us some knowledge about it. So if Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave us knowledge about the birds that are flying in the sky, then definitely he gave us a system in how to be one of the greatest fathers or the greatest mothers that can walk on the face of the earth. And this is a direct command where Allah Azza wa Jalla mentioned that every prophet told their people, كونوا ربانيين بما كنتم تعلمون الكتاب وبما كنتم تدرسون. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told the prophets to tell the people, become Rabbaniyin. Now the word Rabbaniyin means become people who will gradually develop young ones, who will gradually develop others, who will gradually teach them the minor issues before the major issues. Become Rabbaniyin. What is the quality of this tarbiyah? Rabbaniyin, tarbiyah, Rabb, these words are all linked and are related to each other. So what is the quality of this Rabbani, this person who's going to be a good parent, a good murabbi? Allah Azza wa Jalla said, بِمَا كُنْتُمْ تُعَلِّمُونَ الْكِتَابِ, because you teach the Quran, you teach the Kitab, you teach the Revelation. وَبِمَا كُنْتُمْ تَدْرُسُونَ, and you also study. So as a parent, it never ends for us to learn how to be a parent. It's a constant experience. I have 3 children by the grace of Allah Azza wa Jal, and I definitely will put forth a disclaimer that I am nowhere an expert in raising children. The 4th one is coming any second, so if my phone rings and you see me run out the room, you know I'm headed to the hospital. So here Allah Azza wa Jal tells us the secret is to continuously teach and to continuously learn. That cycle never ends. So let's begin with some of the principles. The very first principle I would like to put out today is one word: love. Love exhibited, since we're fathers here, so I'm just going to use the word father, right? But these principles also can be used for the mothers. Love exhibited by the father. Love is the basis of all actions in the universe. Why do angels move wings? Why do angels bring rain? Simply because they love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why do you do anything? You do anything for one reason. Because you love it, or you love the benefit it will bring about. Right? So love is the driving force that will make anyone do any action. Therefore, this should be the basis, the foundation between us as fathers and our children. Let's take a sneak peek into the love of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam for his children. It has been reported that when the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam would enter into his room, Fatima radiallahu anha, her daughter, while she was sitting, she would get up and offer her seat to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is the father. Let's continue the narration. Then it says, that when the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam would be sitting and Fatima radiallahu anha would enter the room, the Messenger of Allah, the best creation, the Imam of the Prophets and Messengers, the leader of the Sahaba, would stand up and give his seat to Fatima radiallahu anha. Look at this subtle love between the father and the daughter. How touching is that? There had to have been a strong bond between these two for this to happen. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was giving khutbah, Jummah khutbah. Hassan and Hussein, they come to his minbar and they start playing. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam during his khutbah stops the khutbah, steps down, picks up Al-Hassan and Hussein, hugs and kisses them. During the khutbah, Jummah, people are waiting for the Jummah. Then puts them down, goes back up to the minbar and start giving khutbah. Imagine this happening today in our masjids. Namaz jodegi. Imagine what people would say. You have to repeat the Jummah all over again, right? The Prophet ﷺ attention and love to his first grandsons. The Prophet ﷺ had a son by the name of Ibrahim. And it was the custom at that time that when they had newborn, they would give it to the wet nurses out in the suburbs so they would learn the proper Arabic and they would learn the proper culture and the proper behavior. Anas ibn Malik radiallahu anhu says that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said he used to go out around the hills of Medina. And he said we would go with him. And he would go to the wet nurse, enter the house, pick up his son Ibrahim, kiss him, put him down, and then go back. Allahu Akbar. What leader in the world does that today? What parent in the world does that today? Stops and leaves everything, goes towards the hills, only for one purpose. Enters the house, picks up his son, kisses him, puts him down, and then walks back. An exhibit of immense love for his child. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was sitting one day and Al-Hassan came and he kissed him. A man by the name of Al-Aqra was right next to him. He said, "You kissed your children?" He said, "I have 10 children, I've never kissed one of them." Imagine the hardness. I haven't kissed one of them. In our times it would be like, forget about kissing children, we don't see the children. I'm home when they're sleeping. I get up when they're sleeping. I see them on Saturdays, Sundays. And then I need personal time. They're bothering me. So my wife, can't you just take them aside? Right, this is the situation. Not everybody, some people. So the Prophet ﷺ said, "Man la yarham la yurham." The one who doesn't show mercy will not receive mercy. So the Prophet ﷺ counted a single kissing of your child as an act of mercy, and not only as an act of mercy, but as an act that will bring about mercy from Allah Azza wa Jalla subhanahu wa ta'ala to you. Also, we look at the Prophet ﷺ, his care for the children. He said, I would enter the salah intending to prolong the salah. But then when I would hear the cries of the children, I would shorten the salah. Salah, one of the greatest pillars of Islam. The Prophet ﷺ is shortening it because of a cry of a child. That perhaps a mother may be testing her child. So this love should be the foundation for all the other principles that inshallah we're about to mention. This love, this bond, this relationship has to be the basis. This love has to be the basis for whatever we do with our children. If this strong love is missing, it's a problem. Some of us, when we come home, it's like it's martial law, you know? Step in the door, daddy's home, martial law. No one can talk, everything's be silent, you know? Whatever daddy says, you gotta get mommy's permission to cross in front of daddy. Right? It has to be extremely, extremely strict. But we see the Prophet Muhammad entering into the house, Hassan and Hussein would run to hug and kiss him. Then what kind of environment do we have in our houses? Do we have an environment of love with our children? Right? Let's think about that. Now some other people have an environment of love, but the love is to another extreme. It's to the extreme where they love their children. So they allow them to go out with friends who may not necessarily be a positive influence. That they love their children, that they let them go roam freely on the internet because they love their children, they don't want to see their children upset. Now this is an extreme form of love which has to be balanced. And it's balanced and is shown to us in the Quran, where Nuh ﷺ said to his son, when the flood and the rain was coming, "Irkab ma'ana, come with me, come with us. Mount the boat, mount the ship." And now don't worry about it, I'm going to go up to this hill and I'll be safe. Don't worry about that, I don't need that, Daddy. And then when the flood started coming in, Nuh ﷺ said, he called to his Lord and said, "Innahu min ahli." He's from my family. And Allah Azza wa Jalla said, "Innahu laysa min ahli." He's not from your family. He's not from your followers. He's not from the ones who are going to be saved. Showing that there must be a balance of this love. And if we look at the people, the young kids who grew around the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we notice this balance. If we look at Anas bin Malik radiallahu anhu, who grew up in front of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If you look at Ibn Abbas and Ibn Umar, and besides the 7 children of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we notice that these individuals, when they grew up with the love of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but at the same time they were disciplined. At the same time, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would give them advice wherever advice was needed. There wasn't a silent parenting. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would enjoin good, forbid evil. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Ad-deen al-nasiha," that this deen is all about giving proper advice. So letting the kids roam freely on the internet to say it's out of love is an incorrect assessment. Love is to love them in a way that is beneficial for them. Love is, as the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, كُلُّ مَا مِن مَوْلُودٍ إِلَّا يُولَدُ عَلَى الْفِطْرَةِ. There isn't a single child that's born except that is born in the state of Islam. Allah Azza wa Jal gave you this child as a Muslim, on the state of Islam. How will you return this child back to Allah Azza wa Jal? Here's where your love is balanced. Will you return this child back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the state of Islam? Or will you return the child back to Allah Azza wa Jalla when he dies on a different state? This is where our love has to be balanced. The second thing I would like to talk about today is the concept of patience. After having a lot of love, we have to have a lot of patience with our children. A lot of patience. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it's reported that he would be in sujood, and Al-Hasan and Hussein would play on his back. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would not pull anyone of them off. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would not stop any one of them. It is reported that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would remain in the sujood position until Al-Hasan and Hussein would finish playing on his back and come down. Now, imagine that today. Going to sujood and somebody jumping on the back. Fatamiz hakta. Right after salah, you look for the danda immediately. Where are those kids? Bother me in salah. They said, "No, I'm praying and worshiping Allah Azza wa Jalla." The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Anas ibn Malik radiallahu anhu said, "I served the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam for 10 years. His proud title, Khadimun Nabi, the servant of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I served him for 10 years. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam never said oof to me. He never said, "Why didn't you do that?" He never said to me, "You could have done this in a different way." Look at the patience of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Anas ibn Malik was 10 years old. We're not talking about how the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was dealing with an adult. He was dealing with a young child in this way. He never said oof to a young child. Today some of us don't even look at children as if they're, as human beings, just let them go in the corners. The Prophet ﷺ would give them proper attention, give them individual identification, identity, where he wouldn't even speak to them in such a manner. So what is required is patience. And included in this patience is to know when to use your authority. A lot of us use our authority loosely because of the lack of patience. We immediately, the first thing that comes in our mouth is, "Don't do that. Do this." We use this every time you give a command. Every time you give a prohibition, you're using your authority. Now your authority has to be used selectively. Because if the authority is not used selectively, you decrease the value